Welcome to the Port to Port podcast with Ronan.
Welcome back to another episode of the Port to Port. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who's truly embraced the solo cruising lifestyle. If you're a fan of cruise content on YouTube, Instagram, you've probably come across her channel already. It's Mer Cruises Solo. Meredith has sailed on 29 cruises.
That's right.
29 cruises, 200 days at sea, visiting 44 countries and territories, all while sharing her experiences. Meredith, welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to be here.
It's brilliant to have you on. Obviously, we've known each other from like Instagram for a while now, so it's really cool that you've actually come on the show and had a chat and stuff like that. So we're going to be able to get your tips on solo traveling and all the rest of it in this episode, hopefully.
I'm looking forward to it.
Also, before we start, just a congratulations as well to the Eagles on winning the Super Bowl. So it's a lot of celebrations still going on, I'd say.
Still going on. It's like a sea of green everywhere in Philadelphia right now. So a lot of celebrating.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I was in Philadelphia once and it's a lovely city. It's a really nice city. And when I saw the pictures, as I was saying to you, but it's like the Rocky Steps, wasn't it? That's where the celebrations were. Yeah, it looked unreal. It was so cool.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah, it was a good time.
Okay, so let's start. I suppose, what inspired you to start your first solo cruise?
Well, I had done a cruise back when I was 17 for my senior class trip. It was like a 4-day carnival cruise, and it was my only experience cruising. And so I loved it. And for years and years, I wanted to go back on a cruise, but I just couldn't find anyone to go with me. And so I'd search here and there, and I found a great deal on Norwegian for a studio cabin because they have the studio cabins for solo cruisers. And I was sitting with a friend out getting drinks one night, and I was like, I should just pull the trigger and do this. And he's like, do it right now, push the button. So I pushed the button and I booked it. And it was on the Norwegian Escape out of Manhattan. So New York, sail away to Bermuda. And I had the time of my life. It was amazing. And so from that point forward, I was like, I need to keep doing this, even though I didn't have anyone to go with me. You know, I had such a good time on that first cruise. I met so many people, made friends. It was amazing in every way. So that was my inspiration to kind of keep going with it.
That's good. Like, is Norwegian the only one at the moment that are doing solo, or have they all? Has a lot of the other ships started to come on board now?
There are a few. Celebrity does have solo balconies. In fact, I stayed in one on the Celebrity Beyond. But most cruise lines, while they will let you book solo, they don't really have solo cabins. There are a few here and there. I think MSC has some, Royal Caribbean has some, but they're very few and far between and not on all of their ships. Whereas Norwegian has solo cabins on every single one of their ships in all their categories. So inside, ocean view, and balcony are all set aside, dedicated to solo cruisers.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, no, it's good to know, because I suppose you've done a lot more than me. I've done 10 cruises, but I suppose I know people who haven't cruised before, and they might want to do something where they're on their own and they just kind of just to try it. So I knew about Norwegian because they see, but like, are they the most reasonable when it comes to in relation to price? Because I know, like, a friend of mine, we've often asked him to come along and stuff, but like on other cruises, they're charging you nearly the same price as two people. And I suppose
it's been quite the topic lately. I know Norwegian has always had solo pricing for their solo cabins that is less than double price. But there are some cruise lines out there that are charging double and more than double for a solo. And that's, I believe their thought process is that they're losing onboard spending by only having one person cruise. So they're kind of charging the extra that they think they're missing out on. But I have always consistently found Norwegian to have the best, most competitive pricing for solos and the most availability. And that's where the challenge can come in. For example, MSC. Although I've never cruised on MSC, I've heard many anecdotal stories about they block solos from actually booking up to a certain amount of time before the cruise departs. So you might find a great deal and go to book it, but they'll block you if you put in one person, which I don't understand why. I think that's a terrible way of operating because it would deter me from even booking the cruise at all. Some people get around that by booking the cabin for two people and then just saying that the other person can't go on embarkation.
That's
Uh,
one way of doing it.
right. There are ways to get around it, but no, I've really found consistently Norwegian to have the best setup, the best pricing, and the best availability for solos.
Okay, okay. Like I've gone with MSC the most. I've gone 7 cruises with MSC, but I found as I went with them versus like Celebrity and even with Princess, like they're good, but I do find that their customer base and the kind of customer focus isn't as good as the other ones, especially after the cruise last year in Brazil. Like they never told us in advance that it was just going to be Portuguese speaking. And to have like 90, it's like that's fair enough. You were leaving from another country, but at least give us a heads up to say, just so you know, no one's going to speak English. And that's what I
Wow.
didn't, yeah, I didn't like that about MSC because especially like when like we're gold members with them, we're like after going up the ladder with them a lot, and I just didn't like the fact that they didn't even like, the first time that we heard about it was when we got on board eventually after like 7 hours of waiting in the port. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
It's that was like they got a letter alone just for the amount of time I was waiting. It was
I
like
bet.
we got to the port. Our check-in was at 12. We didn't get onto the ship till like nearly 6ish hour after. And even at
Wow.
that, the they closed all the restaurants because they were immediately doing all the check-ins and all the rest of it. So by the time we got on the ship, we had to go through 4 different queues before we got on the ship, then a bus, and then we got on to the ship to another queue, and there was another guy taking our passports, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're Irish," and I was like, "Yeah," and he's just like, "Oh," he's like, "There's nobody else on board that speaks English," and I was like, oh, "Okay, okay," and so like it was the first time in the whole time that we were like preparing for it, there was no correspondence. Afterwards we spoke to them, even on the boat that we spoke to them, and they tried to like just be like, "Oh look, have a trip to the spa for an hour," and it's like that's not good enough for after traveling around the world to Brazil. And that's so like we never really got anywhere, but I think I've just decided I'm not going to go with them. Like MSC are cheap, but
I've heard that feedback. I've heard that depending on where you cruise with them, what part of the world you go with MSC, that they're better than other places. For example, I've heard in the US that they just don't have the same level of customer service that you're accustomed to with other cruise lines. And that's what's kind of prevented me from cruising with MSC because their pricing is really good. But the few
mm,
times I've gone to book with them, like I mentioned earlier, it's they blocked me as a solo traveler when I get to checkout. And I don't want to give a cruise line my money that doesn't really want me there. So I just haven't cruised with them.
yeah, like they're kind of cutting themselves off there, like because they are going to lose out on a lot of people that would do it just to try it. Like so,
Right.
it's kind of annoying that they kind of are doing that. I suppose when you started solo cruising, like, did you have any concerns or fears about doing it? The fact that you were going on your own.
I didn't really. I feel like cruising is a safer way of traveling if you're solo because you're contained on the ship. You're not out in a town where you don't know the neighborhoods, you don't know which areas are safe or not. There are strangers and, who knows. But on the ship, I feel like you're always, within shouting distance of a crew member and it's a smaller, more contained area. And I felt that I heard that Bermuda was a very safe place and a great place to cruise. And so I thought, all of those things just made me feel like it was the right choice to try for my first time. And it all went wonderfully.
Okay, I know that's cool. Yeah, like we've never kind of gone to any place where you're kind of like, oh my God, I need to like watch over my shoulder or anything like that. Like I think one of the Caribbean islands we had gone to, somebody did say to us on the ship at like, Celebrity do like a talk about all the different ports you're going
Mm.
to. And I think in one of them they were kind of like, don't stay local where the ship docks because it can be dangerous. They're like, take a bus and go do something else outside. And then you're kind of like, why are you docking here if it's that dangerous. It's like, fair enough, you want money for excursions, but it's kind of like, now I'd say
Yeah.
that nothing has ever happened in in the 10 cruises that we've done.
Right. And that's the tricky thing about ports. There are so many ports around the world that are not located anywhere near the city or the town that you actually want to go to. So it's industrial, it's a commercial port. Sometimes you can't even walk off the ship. You have to take a shuttle or a bus somewhere. And that is one of the most challenging things I think for that comes along with cruising is not being able to just walk off the ship and go where you please. That there are so many places where you're docking far away from the city, the attraction that you're trying to see. And so you've got to stand in line, sit on a bus for a couple hours. But you got to weigh the options there. Is it worth it? And for me, I found that it's always worth it because I like being able to spend one day somewhere and then the next day I wake up in a totally different place.
Yeah, that's what I love. I love just go like checking out all these different places. And if you want to go back, you can just fly back if you really love it. Like
Exactly.
it does happen here in the port in the port town where I'm in Cove. So like we can only take in one ship
Hmm.
at a time. And if there's a second ship that's due to come in, I think they kind of have a way of prioritizing it. So like if MSC and if Princess are both coming into Cork at the same time, they usually give priority to Princess over MSC. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't understand why, but so what happens is the other ship then, so like when they dock, you been to Cove?
No, not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
so when you come into Cove, where the ship docks is it's right in the middle of the town. You're within
Hmm.
2 minute walk from the town, and you're within 10 minute. You're within 20 minutes on the train. But they do loads of excursions to like the Jameson, the whiskey places. They go down to Blarney. They go to Killarney. There's loads of places. But if you go to the other port, it's like you said, it's an industrial port, and
Hmm.
it's an hour's drive just to come back to Cove.
Wow.
So
A
it's
lot.
yeah, like so if you're like especially for American tourists because the history in Cove is so big because it's the last port to call for the Titanic. We've got Lusitania graves here. Like there's so many things that people come here for. And
Hmm.
if you're looking forward to come in and you're sailing past and you have to go an hour and a bit, they don't even like do shuttles where they could, it would be, if they did, it would take 5-10 minutes to just shuttle them from from the boat over to the pier, but they don't even do that.
Wow. Yeah, there's a couple ports, like I'm going on a cruise in May, and I'm actually departing from Le Havre, which is, of course, labeled as Paris, when in reality it's 2.5 hours from Paris.
Yeah.
On a,
London is the
it's
same. They have like Southampton, but London.
It's nowhere near London. Right,
No.
exactly. So people don't understand that. I think they label it as Paris or as Venice, and you're not actually in the city, and you've got to think about all your transportation and the logistics that go along with that, and it can be challenging, especially if you're solo like I am, which
Yeah, like
uh
that's it
part
as well,
is
yeah.
yeah, that's the challenging part for me is making sure I know how to get around and I can do so safely, which is not always the case. So.
Yeah, like it's funny because I think I was telling you about the cruise that we did 2 years ago to Iceland. So we got on the train here in Cove and we went to Dublin. We went to see Ricky Gervais in a show. We stayed in Dublin. Then we flew to Southampton, got on the ship in Southampton, and the following day cruised back into Cove. Yes.
That's
And
funny.
yeah, like and we were telling people they're like, "Where are you from?" We are like, "From the port that we're going to tomorrow."
I guess you didn't get off the ship that day.
No, we actually did because we had a cat and we were like, we'll feed the cat, and then we called to see my mother, and it was just funny because like people were just like, "You're not getting off." I was like, as the ship pulled in, I could see my car, and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna get
Yeah.
in my car and drive off
Well,
home." So we went
that's
up home. Yeah, it was funny. Like we went up home, we threw our washing into the laundry and we went back on the ship then with it. Like I think I picked up one or two things to get back on board, like sodas and stuff, and then we went
Mhm.
back on. and that was it. But it was so funny because we were telling so many people who were working on board. They're like, "Oh, you're from Ireland." They're like, "Why are you getting on? Why aren't you getting on tomorrow?" I was like, "But that's the annoying thing about Cove. And there's so many people that live here, and
Mm,
they're not allowed to get on the ships in Cove. You can't start a cruise
right.
from here. You have to do it from another country, which is kind of annoying."
That is frustrating. Yeah, there's, Philadelphia is actually becoming a cruise port starting next April. It's opening up for cruise ships, and Norwegian will be sailing out of Philadelphia. So I'm curious to see if they'll expand the port so that it becomes a port of call and not just an embarkation and debarkation port. Because, I'd love to be able to go down and just see ships coming in and out and, visit ships for the day and that kind of thing. But it's something I'd never have thought about before because we didn't have ships close by, and now this will become a regular port city. It's
That
exciting.
that's cool. Yeah, no, it is amazing seeing, like, we get around 150 ships a year here. Now, some of them it's the same ship that comes back. It's doing the same kind of circuit every couple of months.
Mhm.
But generally it's like 150 cruises, and like that's why I started cruising, because I saw them
Mhm.
constantly. So it's just like, but I think they do need to kind of open it up a bit to so that people can get on board. And like, the only problem is we don't have a terminal. That's obviously the main thing.
Uh, right. Right.
So like there's no way for anybody to get on. Like, I've got on ships to do days when the ships come in. I've been on like Princess and MSC mainly because I traveled with them before. But
Mhm.
even since COVID, it's been so hard to get on the ships. It's
Yeah,
crazy now.
I know. It feels like we are finally getting back into the normal, way of cruising, and the COVID restrictions and all the things that came along with that are finally in the past now. Back to normal, back to full ships,
Yeah.
overcapacity ships, I think. So those days were fun, but I think they're gone now.
Did you cruise at any point while it was like in the middle of COVID?
The first cruise I did was September of 2021. So it was actually one of the first cruises after the restart, and it was in the Caribbean. And so several of the ports that we visited was actually the very first cruise ship that had been to those ports since, March of 2020. And so that was really exciting because we got a huge welcome party, and we were the first people to step foot there in 18 months, which was crazy to think about how long we went without any cruises. So yeah, that was cool. And of course, they had low capacity ships. I think we sailed at like 32% capacity,
Oh,
and there
okay.
was no kids because at that time, under 12, I don't think they allowed vaccinations. And so you had to be vaccinated to go on a cruise back then. So it was just adults only, no kids, and 30% capacity. It was like a ghost ship, but you had the best service of your life,
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a dream.
It was, and those were the good times, but we're back to full capacity, and yeah, those were good times.
I like. I suppose at that point, were they doing where the whole buffet where they served you?
Yeah, for a little bit they did. The crew would serve at the buffet, which I think was a good thing. I don't mind that just because I've seen what people do in the buffet and how unsanitary it can be. So I don't mind it. My last Holland America cruise I did last summer, they still serve you from the buffet for most of the stations. I don't know if that was a thing they always did or if that was just something they've changed since COVID, but I didn't mind it at all. It still went just as fast, and you could still get as much of the portion as you wanted. You just didn't have to worry about 50 people having touched a spoon before you. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing. It's like I've heard a lot of stories. I think somebody told us on the last cruise that we were on about they were on a cruise somewhere and somebody like picked up the spoon and physically like
Oh,
took a taste and then put it back in. So
oh,
it's
that's
like,
terrible.
yeah. So when you hear things like that, like we always bring hand sanitizer now with us all the
Yeah.
time, especially to the buffet, because you're just like, you don't know. Now, fair enough. I know they hand, like, especially on Celebrity, every time we went in, they're always there with the bags and they're giving you the hand sanitizer, but like you're still touching all the stuff at the table. So
Exactly. And I've watched people go into the buffet and ignore the washing stations and ignore the hand sanitizer, and you just can't trust people to to use it.
No, you definitely, you just, yeah, like that's the thing, you don't know what people are going to be doing. Like people are probably going to the bathroom and not washing their hands either. So it's like,
No, I'm sure of it.
so like, I
Uh,
suppose if you could pick three of your top places that you've been to so far, which ones do you think would be your favorite of the, like, if, of all the places you've been?
Favorite ports or favorite cruises?
We'll do ports first.
Okay. My top favorite port ever is Geiranger, Norway. It was the most beautiful place I have ever seen in my life. I loved visiting there and getting to the sail in is half of the experience because you're going through the fjords and you're just seeing these mountains rise up out of the water on either side of the ship, and it was incredible. The scenery there is just like unlike anything I've ever seen. And I would say my, second would be, even though it's not technically a port, but Antarctica is easily at
Okay.
the top of the list. We did it, I did a scenic cruising where we spent 2 days around the Antarctic Peninsula and Elephant Island. And those 2 days were some of the best I've ever had on a ship. And it was New Year's Eve too, when we were down in Antarctica. And so I loved that port. And then just recently on my Southeast Asia cruise, I visited the Philippines for the first time. And I would say one of my most fun port experiences ever was in Coron, Philippines. And I just kind of got off the ship and agreed on a price with a guide who then drove me around to several different places. And it felt very authentic, very much getting to experience the local, place where people lived their authentic lives, and it wasn't a curated shore excursion. And so I would put that one definitely at the top of my list. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes doing the local tours is probably better because I think they
Mhm.
bring you to places that the bus tours aren't going to bring you to.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was on like a little motorcycle tuk-tuk sort of thing. And we just rode around on these dirt roads. It felt very in the jungle almost, and not at all what I had expected to do in that port that day. But it's sometimes those adventures that you don't plan out that end up being some of the best experiences. And that was definitely one of them.
Yeah, like we did one in, I think it was Tortola in British Virgin Islands, where we got off the ship. We didn't have an excursion, and there was like little tiny buses that can take like 10 people. I think it was
Hmm.
like $20 each. Yeah, $20 each for the whole thing, but it was like a 6 hour tour. And like he brought us
That's
all
amazing.
up. He brought us to amazing like spots where we were looking down onto the, you could see the ships in the distance and the whole that. Like, but I think sometimes doing like the local things is kind of, it's a lot cheaper. The only problem is, I suppose, is the fact that if anything happens, the ship's gone without you. That is the
Yeah.
only.
That's one of my biggest fears about cruising is getting left behind. It almost happened to me on my last cruise. I did a third party shore excursion, and we got back 5 minutes before sail away. Not 5 minutes before all aboard time, but 5 minutes before sail away.
Oh.
And I was stressing the whole day. It was the most anxiety I've ever felt in a port day. Fortunately, there were some Norwegian buses for shore excursions behind us, so the ship did wait for them, and therefore we got lucky and they waited for us too. But
Oh my gosh.
that was
Okay.
nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like generally, if I'm doing something, I'm always like, we need to be back at least 2 hours before the ship leaves, just in case. Like,
definitely. Yeah, give yourself plenty of extra time for
yeah, like
sure.
I think the only time apart from like the small ones where we're only doing like a small little tour around an island in the Caribbean, when we were in Iceland, we were staying in Reykjavik overnight, so we knew we had all day anyway. So like we did a 12-hour excursion, but we didn't book it with the ship, we booked it with Viator, and it was like we got to do all the, we did the Blue Lagoon, we did all the volcano, and we did a load of the different things that, and that was fine because you knew, okay, if we're late, we're late. The ship's still going to be there. We don't have to worry. And I
Right.
just think that that kind of thing is fine. But there's, I know a lot of people do use Viator and they use other things, but it's just, if anything goes wrong, I'm just so nervous about the whole thing.
Yeah, some of those places, Viator, Get Your Guide, and the Shore Excursions group, they do guarantee to get you back on the ship, but there are always things that can happen out of their control. A flat tire could be the difference between you getting back in time and being 15 minutes late. And you just never know what can happen. Traffic can be unpredictable. Too many things can be unpredictable. So it's definitely a risk. I do think that's what makes overnight ports so great, though, because then you really do get to do as much as you want to do without having to worry about being back at a certain time. And those are few and far between as far as overnight ports. But when you get one, I think it's such a cool way of experiencing a port.
Yeah, like I think we're doing when we go to Japan this year, we have an overnight in Osaka. I think it's Osaka or Kyoto, one or the other. But at least because like when we're there, we can go to. We've got a whole day planned in Nintendo World, so at least we can go there. We don't have to worry about anything. And the following day, we are going to do an excursion with the ship. Like, because there's literally it's a 12-night cruise. And have you been to Japan yet?
No, not yet. Not
Okay,
yet.
yeah,
It's on my
it's
list.
like yeah, it's been on our list for a while, but it's crazy expensive to get there. But by the looks of it, it seems to be cheap enough when you're there.
Once you're there. Right, right.
From what I've heard, like it's funny because I asked the hotel if we could do an early check-in because the flight gets in like super early, and the guy's like, yeah, that's fine, but it's going to cost you 1,000 yen extra per hour. And I was like, okay, and I looked it up. I was like, that's €6. I was like, that's fine. You can do it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if that's all it's going to cost to get to bed early, that's fine.
Right, exactly.
So I suppose we know what your top three ports are. What would you say your top cruise lines are? So
Top cruise lines. Well, I have only cruised on 4 cruise lines, but Norwegian is obviously at the top of my list. I've done 22 cruises with Norwegian, so they are by far the cruise line I'm most experienced with. And then Virgin Voyages is another fantastic cruise line. I've loved every cruise. I've done 3 now. I have another one coming up next month on Virgin. And I love that they're adults only. And I think that their ships are incredible. They're the perfect mid-sized ship, not too small, not too big. And they're getting a lot more diverse itineraries. So they'd probably be my second. And then easily third is Celebrity. I loved Celebrity Beyond, and I've done 2 Celebrity cruises now. I think they have such a great onboard experience. Their food was incredible. I'd love to go back on more of their Edge class ships. Yeah, they're an easy top 3 choice for me.
Yeah, like I've not gone on Norwegian yet, but we do want to go on it. The whole thing of just no kids is just that straight away is like, yes, we want to do it. Norwegian is something I think if we go to the Norwegian fjords, I think we'll do it with Norwegian just to experience it with Norwegian because we want to kind of get a taste of that. But for us, even though we've cruised with MSC 7 times, I've only cruised with Celebrity twice. But Celebrity, the food in Celebrity, as you said, it's phenomenal. It's like being on land in proper restaurants, and that's even in the buffet or on the main dining. It's amazing.
I couldn't agree more. I loved my experience on the Beyond. The only downside I had with Celebrity is on their newer ships, they don't have traditional balconies, or they have very, very few. And so the only reason Celebrity is not my favorite cruise line is because they don't have solo deals, and they kind of gouge pricing when it comes to solos booking. So for that reason, and that they don't have balconies on their newer ships, that's the only reason they're not number 1 for me, because I thought their onboard experience was just incredible.
Yeah, as I said, that's what happened when we wanted to bring our friend. It was like, come with us, but then when we looked at it, it was like, okay, there's no point because you're paying nearly what we're paying, and it's insane.
Right.
So did you had the new like balcony where the window came down?
Yeah, the infinite veranda is what they call it.
Yeah, what did you think of it? Because I've heard a lot of people are kind of, it's iffy.
It is controversial. I didn't mind it for the 6 days I was on the Beyond. So I didn't use it much. It was in the Caribbean, and it was so hot that I really wasn't going to be sitting outside anyway, even if I had a traditional balcony. But the downside to it is that if you roll the window down, your air conditioner completely shuts off. So your whole cabin gets really warm. So you have to decide, like, do I want to, spend the time to cool my cabin back down if I roll this window down? So I ended up really not using the window at all. I left it up. And so it kind of felt more like you're in an ocean view cabin. You have a great floor to ceiling, glass view, but I didn't use it for the fresh air, which I do like doing on other cruise lines. And with a traditional balcony, I go out and sit outside for a little bit. Then you have a cool cabin to come back inside too. That wasn't really the case on the Infinite Verandas. So I can see why people are not the biggest fan. And if
Yeah.
I had my choice, I would choose the traditional balcony over the Infinite Veranda.
Yeah, like I love having the balcony. Like we did the balcony in South America, and we've done the balcony in the couple of the Caribbeans and stuff. But in Alaska, when we did Alaska last year on the Edge, we decided to go with the ocean view, but it's the infinite one that you have, and it was actually fine because I was like, I'm not going to be sitting out on the balcony that much. It's going to be freezing. So
Hmm.
I for that I didn't mind it because obviously the cost came down a small bit because of that. But yeah, like I usually would prefer to have a balcony if the cost is right. I did an inside cabin once and I hated it. I'm never again going to do an inside cabin.
I did for my very first, I did the studio cabin on Norwegian, which is like less than 100 square feet. It's a tiny, tiny little room. And then I've done it one other time also on Norwegian in a studio cabin. And I've just kind of said I'm done doing inside cabins. I love waking up to seeing the sunrise outside. And to me, that's worth the balcony cost. I'm not one of those people that's gonna get the cheapest cabin on the ship. I'm not a super budget traveler. I will pay extra for a balcony because I feel like it's worth it. And I'll admit to it. I will pay extra for the balcony. I think it's for me on most every cruise I've done, I have absolutely got my money's worth out of the balcony. So I think it's worth it for me.
Yeah, I'd say like if you're going to use your balcony, then it's definitely worth it. I suppose. Like that's the thing. Like we are off the ship for quite a lot. If we're in port, we're off the ship, and then we're kind of roaming around. So I suppose I'd use the balcony kind of in the evenings if we've just come back, and I'll sit out on the balcony for a while. I've sat out when we're like in port and you're just kind of waiting for people to get back on and stuff. But generally,
Mhm.
like it doesn't really bother me but as long as I can see out, I'm happy. So it's like that's okay.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
have you ever had a cruise experience that didn't go according to plan?
I have had quite a few ports get missed due to weather. For example, I have done two cruises now that were meant to stop at Amsterdam, and both times it got canceled due to weather. And so I've yet to visit Amsterdam because every cruise I've been on that goes there, it's been a canceled port. Itineraries are subject to change. I think that's one of the downsides to cruising, but it's what you have to acknowledge you're accepting the risk of when you cruise. If you don't want the risk of missing a port due to weather, or if you're booking a cruise specifically for the itinerary, it's probably not the right path. I cruise because I love cruising. I love being on the ship. I love the ship experience. I love having the ship to come back to at the end of the day. So I would never book a cruise just for the itinerary because there is no guarantee that every port you're going to be able to visit. I Norwegian is actually one of the worst lines out there when it comes to changing the itinerary after final payment. That has happened to me many times where you pay in full, you're good to go, and then all of a sudden you get the email and your whole itinerary has been adjusted for some reason or another, whether it's due to weather or cost optimizations or whatever they want to say that it is. But that has happened a few times. So it can be frustrating, but again, it's kind of the trade-off when you choose to do a cruise for your vacation. So
Yeah, no, I think it's happened to us once or twice. We were supposed to go to Sir Banias Island in Dubai. I think that was one, and Malta. On our very first cruise, we were supposed to go to Malta, and apparently it's very dangerous to get into Malta, like even on a good day. But I think
mm,
the wind was super bad, so they just decided not to do it. 2 years ago, we were actually we started in Athens. Now we did book this cruise for the itinerary because it was going to Israel, and we wanted to see Israel, and
um,
we was going to, and it literally the day before we got on the ship, the attacks happened, and
mm,
like, but it was crazy because like we had Israelis on the ship because it was doing the whole route. So
right.
our whole itinerary got thrown up because so like what happened was we did go to Santorini the first day and they made the final call okay, we're not going to go to Israel now. So what we
Mm.
had to do is sail direct to Cyprus. All of the Israeli passengers had to get off in Cyprus. They had to get on another ship to go back to Israel.
Oh, wow.
We were supposed to go to or we were supposed to go to Cyprus either way, but we weren't allowed off the ship that day. They had to get off. It took about 4 hours to get everybody off. We left again. We were supposed to go to some port in Turkey. Or we were supposed to go to Kusadasi, and instead it got changed to Antalya. And
Hmm.
then we went back to Cyprus the following day and we were allowed off the ship. But like that was the most hectic I've ever seen. And like I could, obviously they can't do anything because of what was going on, but it was like they did, to be fair, do as much as they could to try and like get us to the ports that they could get us to.
Yeah, I can't imagine the challenges that how challenging it must be to deal with itinerary changes like that on the cruise line side. I mean, the logistics of having to change a port when they're booked so far in advance. The cruise lines book these ports years in advance. The schedules come out years before. So to be able to scramble last minute and make changes and adjustments, it's a lot of work. It's impressive that they're able to do it so quickly.
Yeah, no, I think because we were kind of like, okay, we're probably not going to go to Israel. We potentially aren't going to go somewhere else. So we were kind of, I think everybody was like, in the buffet, you'd hear people talking about, like, oh, I don't think we're going to end here. We're going to go somewhere else. Oh, we're going to turn around and we're just going to have a sea day instead. But to be fair, they did try and at least we got to go to Turkey and we got to kind of still see some of the places that they had said they'd bring us to, which was
Hmm.
good, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I suppose in relation to the solo cruising, like, is there ever a point where you're just kind of like, oh God, I feel a bit lonely now because I'm here on my own or anything like that?
Yeah, there are times. And it's very interesting because every cruise is different. Some cruises I've been on, especially the longer ones, the ones that are more than, 7 days, where by the end of 7 days, you're just starting to get to know people and see familiar faces. On the longer cruises I've found, I make friends. Like I actually keep in touch with people that I've met and we have a great time while cruising. But there have been some cruises I've done where I didn't meet a single person. It just, for whatever reason, like I had conversations in passing, but I never really connected with people and made friends. And so those, there's on those cruises and in those moments, it's kind of like, yeah, it's a little lonely, like I just didn't end up meeting a lot of people this time, or, didn't really feel any connections with people. Or it's just a cruise where there's a whole lot of couples and it's just me surrounded by a whole lot of couples. So that's not always fun either. But there's always something positive about every cruise. I've never had a bad cruise. But there are definitely moments where I'm on a trip and I feel lonelier than usual. And then there's some trips where I'm like, man, this is the best. This is the absolute best. I don't want to change anything ever.
No, that's yeah,
It
no, that's
fluctuates.
fair. Like, would you say, like, would you have any kind of tips for people who are considering going on a solo cruise for the first time?
Yeah, my tips vary depending on the kind of person that you are. So for me personally, I'm an introvert, and by nature, I'm actually pretty shy. I don't usually initiate and strike up conversation with people unless I kind of sense that they're the type of people that want to chat, because I don't want to bother people. I don't know if they're, interested in meeting other people if they're in their own space. But what I've found is that no matter what, if I want to be chatty with someone or if I want to meet people, I always can on a cruise. There is no shortage of people willing to have conversations and chat. Just go sit at a bar anywhere and you will be able to strike up a conversation with somebody sitting next to you. Controversially, if you don't want to meet people or if you want to have a little space to your own, like me, I love to read. And so I usually read quite a few books while I'm on a cruise. I just go find a quiet spot and I don't have to worry about anybody bothering me. I can take my time, I can relax, I can unwind, read my books, enjoy my time. And I find that I can get both of those on a cruise. I can get time with other people and spend time interacting and socializing. And I can also spend time by myself and, be with my book and just unwind. So
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that's
it's
good.
it's
That's
about
good.
what you're looking for. Yeah.
Like, I think on Celebrity Silhouette, when we were on Silhouette recently, they had like a really cool library where it had all these like snug chairs. and like you
Hmm.
could literally just like lie inside them, and they're really really cool. Like, and it was always packed with people because I think everyone was just enjoying the chill, and they had like tea and coffee and water that you
Mm.
so like people were staying there for hours. Like we went down there one night and we were just playing board games because you could take some of the board games from some of the places on the ship. And
Hmm.
it's like there's probably some places on some ships that we've never even gone because we're just so set in our ways of doing stuff. Like it's
Yeah, you
crazy.
find a spot that works for you, and you like it, and you always kind of gravitate back towards it. And that's one of the things about cruising on different ships, because there are some ships I've been on where it's really hard to find a space to go sit and lounge and relax, because there's just not a lot of open seating areas. And then there's other ships, like you just said, on Celebrity, there's so many places you can go, find a comfortable seat, sit and relax, be able to see the ocean. To me, that's the sign of a great ship, is when you can always find a seat somewhere and you can always look out to the ocean. To me, those two things are my must-haves on any ship.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, because on MSC, the amount of times we've gone, like, we're go to the one of the bars, no seats. If you go
Hmm.
outside, there's no seats because they've packed the ship so with so many people. They don't have enough seating for them. But like on Princess, the time we went on Princess, phenomenal. They had seats literally
Hmm.
outside. I remember sitting outside on the back of the ship. No one was even near me. And Celebrity's the same. When you're in Celebrity, like inside and outside, there's space like to sit anywhere. It's amazing.
I completely agree. That's why I loved Celebrity so much, is they just had enough seating, excess seating really for everyone, so you never felt overcrowded. You could always find a seat somewhere in a great venue. But I have been on some ships where there just is not enough, especially in a cold weather climate. There are some ships that have really great outdoor seating, but if you're cruising in a cold weather, on a cold weather cruise or a cold itinerary, then everybody's forced inside, and that's where it really becomes felt that there's just not enough space for the amount of people on board.
Yeah, like I suppose we haven't really done the coldest part of the cruise that we've done would have been the day in Alaska last year when we were going up to see the one of the glaciers.
Hmm.
And I think I got up at like 4:30 a.m. because you had to get up because they start at like 5 a.m. And to be
Yeah.
fair to Celebrity, they were going around with cups of hot chocolate and they were going to around to because I was up one of the first people up on deck, and at that point nobody was around. Then as people started coming, to be fair, they kept going around and you could take as much hot chocolate as you want. And like because we were kind of going up towards the glacier for maybe 4 hours, and by the time it did a couple of the turns and came back down, like for me Alaska, I want to go back there because I just loved it up there. And like it's amazing. Seattle is one of the best cities I've ever been to in the States.
I agree. I love Seattle and I loved my Alaska cruise. I definitely want to do another one. It was before I started vlogging and making YouTube videos, so I have not done an Alaska cruise in several years, and I'd love to go back and do another one. And there's just so many other places to see up there that you can do in 7 days. So you have to do more than one, definitely, to
Oh
see it all.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that the next time we might go with somebody else just to try and do a different route, just to see where we can kind of get in and stuff. But I think next year again. But we mightn't go, even though I'd like to go back to Seattle, we might try out of Vancouver just to maybe try somewhere different. So hope that's
Yeah.
the plan anyway. I suppose the fact that you brought up YouTube and stuff, that brings me on to my next question. I suppose what made you to decide to start kind of getting into the whole vlogging and uploading everything of the cruises to YouTube and stuff?
Well, I originally thought I would just do social media. I didn't even really think about YouTube as much, but I realized that, there's such a big audience out there of people who want to watch YouTube to research about places they're going. I used it during COVID when I was having withdrawals of cruising. And I used it to be able to live vicariously through people, in past cruises and vloggers. And I started thinking, there's not really very many female solo cruisers that are making YouTube videos. So I thought maybe this is a niche that's a good opportunity for me to try to get into. And because of how often I'm cruising, and I have the time to do it while I'm cruising on my own to actually film and vlog, I thought, maybe I should just start doing this and see what happens. So I vlogged my very first cruise, which was South America and Antarctica, and I have come a long way since then. Have learned a lot about how to use a camera and how to vlog and how to talk to a camera, but it's been an incredible experience. And I have always been, from the day I started, what worried me the most about it was getting negative feedback, because there's people out there that are going to be mean for no reason. You're going to get negative feedback, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I feel like the overwhelming amount of support and positive comments and positive feedback and comments about how I've helped somebody, planning their cruise or getting to live vicariously because they're unable to cruise themselves, it's worth it to me. Those comments and that feedback has all been worth the time that I've put into this and the effort that it takes and all of the equipment you have to carry with you when cruising. To me, it's been worth it. It's been so rewarding and such a fun experience.
Yeah, that's when I decided to do the podcast. I was like, right, if I'm doing it, I need to go all in and get all the equipment, get all the stuff. So yeah, like it's, especially now that I'm doing like guests on it, whereas like last time when I did it last year, it was just me talking into the microphone, and it's a bit more nerve-wracking when you're having to actually talk to somebody else. But like if there's a good flow going, it's so easy. It's like, it's brilliant. Like this is my third interview that I've done now since for the second season, and it's just getting a bit easier. And especially, like I was saying to you already, it's a lot easier when you're talking to somebody about cruises and travel and you're able to just bounce off each other with that kind of thing. It's just way easier.
Yeah, I could talk about cruising all day long to anyone who wants to listen. It's,
Yeah.
in my real life outside of vlogging, I have a full-time job. And so I feel like every waking moment that I'm not working my full-time job, I'm thinking about cruising, vlogging, editing, whatever it is, planning a trip. I'm so passionate about it, and it's so much fun. And to me, if you're doing something that you enjoy and it's fun, I think you're doing the right thing.
100%. Yeah, like everybody, like as I work outside, do something else as well. So it's like I work and then I'm trying to like at the end of the year, I'm like, right, plan the holidays. When can we kind of get away? And like everybody at work, all they hear from me is either I'm talking about podcasts or I'm talking about going on holidays. So
Yeah.
like last year I was away 5 times. We did two cruises and we did 3 kind of city breaks. And like this year it's only one, so everyone's just like, you're only going away once. And it's like, yeah, but I'm going away for 3 weeks. I can't afford to go everywhere. Like,
Oh. Yeah, that's kind of how it's become for me. My family all knows, of course, but now people at work are starting to know, and they're like, "Oh, where are you going next time?" Or did you just get back from a trip and you're leaving again? And I'm like, yeah, that's it's only ever a countdown to the next trip. That's
oh,
just how.
100%. Yeah, that's what life has become now. It's just like a countdown to the next. Like, I think the best thing is if you're on a ship and you were like, okay, I already know where I want to go, so I'm going to try and see if I get a deal on board so that I've already got something to look forward to the second this is over. It's like, okay, it's not too far. It's like that's not too bad about it.
Yeah, it's tough though when you have a long break between trips. I find myself spending way too much time looking up itineraries and booking things, and then all of a sudden I've found myself where I've got like 6 trips booked through next year. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? I don't have any trips to book. I've already booked everything. So
That's a good way to be as well, though.
Spread it out. Yeah. I mean, planning, I think, is some of the most fun of it. You get to plan the actual trip, but then you get to research the ports, you get to research excursions, figure out what you want to do in that day. And I love that part of it. I think that's so fun. I'm a data-driven person, so I've got spreadsheets for everything. I have spreadsheets for my excursions. I have packing lists that are spreadsheets. I have so much documentation. I love it. I think it just all adds to the whole experience for me. So I live and breathe it, basically.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. Like we booked the Japan cruise over a year before we were going to Japan, and I've done like all my Instagram is now nothing but Japan stuff, and it's like, oh my god, I need to do this, and I'm following all these random people, so and like I'm saving everything because I'm like, okay, it's months away, but I need to remember all these places that I need to go.
Exactly. And it's a lot because you never know how much you're going to be able to fit in. So some of the challenges that you can only do so much in one day. If you're only in port for one day, how do you decide what do you want to do? For me, I get torn because I want to do the touristy excursions because they're touristy for a reason, and they're kind of the hot spots to see. But then you kind of miss out on experiencing more of the local, authentic, culture because you're going off on one focused excursion and you're only getting a taste of the area of the port or the city. So to me, though, that's why I like cruising, because I can always come back again in the future. And if I visit a port and I like it, I know I'll want to come back again. If I don't like it, then I can just skip that port in the future, stay on the ship, or, what have you.
Yeah, yeah, no, I suppose for me, we've done two Caribbean cruises. We did East and we did West.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'd go back again. It's boring because it's like every port is the same
They're
thing.
basically all the same. Yeah, I keep saying that too. Like, I'm not going back to the Caribbean because I've done like 10 Caribbean cruises at this point. But I also cruise for the ships. Like I said earlier, I love being on a ship. I love the cruise experience itself. So if there are new ships that are coming out, for example, Norwegian's new ship, the Aqua, is coming out in April, and I'm going to be on one of the first cruises, but it's a Caribbean cruise. And I've been to those ports. So I'm like, do I just go on this cruise and stay on the ship and not even get off the ship? Like, that'd be okay with me, but does it make a very exciting vlog? Not necessarily. So it's a
Yeah,
trick.
like that's another question I was going to like. Do you feel sometimes that when you're like on the cruise that you're kind of like, oh my God, I have so much to record versus I need to enjoy myself?
Yes, I struggle with that, especially on cruises that have a lot of sea days. So I'm not one to do ship tours. Like, I don't film ship tours because there's always people around, and I just don't want to spend my time walking around trying to wait for the moment when people aren't in a venue. So I don't do ship tours, but I do feel like I miss out on opportunities sometimes to think about unique video ideas when I'm on the ship. So it's either or. Either I have too much that I want to film and I can't get it all done, or I just can't come up with enough ideas, and so I end up not filming because I'm not sure that it would be interesting, and then later I regret it. So it can be a challenge figuring out the right balance between enjoying yourself on a cruise and putting so much time into trying to film content that you may or may not use, or that may or may not even perform well if you do post it. So
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. And so like the next cruise that you've got, so you've got Virgin coming up and then you're going on the Norwegian one in as well, is it?
So yeah, Virgin is in March, and that will be my birthday cruise, actually. It'll be in the Caribbean though, so but all new ports for me. So even though Caribbean all kind of the same, but but they're new ports, so places I haven't been to. And then the Aqua in April, that will be in the Caribbean as well. That's a short cruise, like a 5-day cruise. So a couple of short
Okay.
Caribbean ones. And then in May, I'm doing a Baltic cruise, which I'm really looking
Oh,
forward to because
nice.
that all new ports for me as well. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did the Baltic one out of Copenhagen, and we at the time you could go into Russia, so like got to go into St. Petersburg. So that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Now St. Petersburg, it's kind of a very, even though the sun was shining, it was still very gray.
Oh,
But
I'm
and like the
sure.
people were kind of like, you're just like, I'm afraid of everybody. But it was still cool to go there and just like to experience and say I was in Russia. But like we did like a 12-hour, 13-hour excursion, and it got to the point it was just too boring. It was so historical, it just got too
Mm-hmm.
boring. Like we spent like 5 hours in one place, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that tends to happen on those like 10 to 12-hour full day excursions. There's always a few parts in there that you're like, we didn't need to bother with this. We didn't need to do this part, but they threw it in there anyway. And it's a lot of times it's like, oh, we're going to take you to this shopping area so you can buy souvenirs from my brother's, wife or whatever.
Yeah, that happened. That did happen. We ended up going somewhere, and it was like, oh, it's in euros. It's like, of course it is.
Of
It's
course
like
they'll
it's
accept.
funny how that yeah they don't, you don't need to change your money. So I suppose
Right.
what's a destination that you haven't been to yet but's like very top of the list?
Australia and New Zealand. both at the top of my list right now. Have never been. I do have it booked for late this year. But that's right now like my number one thing that to me has been on my bucket list for so long. I've been so excited to see Australia and New Zealand. That's the one for me right now. That's kind of the big one that I'm really excited for.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because on the first episode when I was talking to my buddy, he hasn't cruised before, but he travels a lot. And when I asked him about where he wanted, like New Zealand was his first choice. Like I'd love to go to Australia and New Zealand, but it's just the thought of the flight. Like even the thought of the flight going to Japan just wrecks my head.
Yeah, the flights to, because I just did, the Southeast Asia cruise, Taiwan to Singapore. So I flew into Taiwan. And from where I live on the East Coast in the US, it's far. It was like 21 hours of actual in-air flight time to get to Taiwan. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But that is the deterrent for most people. And that's what made me put off some of these cruises to the literal other side of the world, because the flight, not only is the flight horribly long, but it's also incredibly expensive. I mean, that is, in my case, for the Southeast Asia cruise, my flights were more than the cruise itself.
Yeah.
And that's
it's the same for us for Japan. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Like we have to fly, it's a 45-minute flight from Cork to London. That part's fine. Then we've like a 4 or 5 hour layover, and then it's I think a 14-hour flight with Japan Airways, and it for the whole thing it's €4,000 for the two of us.
Oh, well, yeah. Flights are so expensive. It can be prohibitive to want to cruise to some of these places in the world. Like I'd love to do Africa cruise. I'd love to do South Africa, but again, the flights, like it's just, yeah, it's tricky to figure out how to not only afford the flights and the cruise, but work it out so that you get there early enough, you have enough buffer time to be able to make it so that the cruise doesn't leave without you. It's a lot. It's a lot of planning.
Yeah, like when we went to Brazil to do the cruise last year, we we did the same kind of thing. It was Cork, London, then London to Sao Paulo with British Airways. We got into Sao Paulo at like 6 a.m. We had the whole day in Sao Paulo, but like we were so tired, we just stayed in the hotel. That night we had Carnival. So like we were wrecked, and then the following day we had the whole mess of waiting to get onto the ship, even though like it took 2 hours to get to the port from Sao Paulo. And then we were like 7 hours waiting at the port. It was such a long day of just mess. Like that's the only...
you kind of lose a whole day when you fly. Even if you arrive early in the morning, if depending on how long your flight was, inevitably you're jet lagged, you're so tired, you don't have the energy to go out and do stuff. For me, that's a loss in the end, is you don't really have that extra day. You're kind of recovering for that day. So yeah, it's a trade-off.
Yeah, like I suppose, yeah, if you're traveling really far, like that's an extra 2 days straight away onto what you need as a holiday, because of the fact that, and then on top of that, you have your jet lag as well. I think the worst jet lag I've ever had was coming back from LA. I think I was like jet lagged for like 3 or 4 days, which was, and I've never been that bad, but that was bad.
No, coming back from Asia, when I flew back from Singapore, it's a 12-hour difference, and it took me 2 weeks to recover, fully recover. It was bad. Yeah, I was waking up at 4 a.m. for 2 weeks straight. I just could not switch over back to East Coast time.
The things we do for cruising.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth it. It's all worth it.
Yeah, no matter what. Like I hate flying, but it's not going to stop me going somewhere to cruise. That's the only thing. Like it doesn't matter. Meredith, it's been amazing chatting with you. I could literally chat with you for 10 hours. I'd say we'd be here all night.
I know.
Like it's been amazing. Like you've shared a lot about what can come from solo cruising. So like I suppose for yourself, you're on YouTube, you're under Mer Cruises Solo on YouTube, and it's the same on Instagram. Are you on Facebook and TikTok or anything like that?
Both. Yep. Same name,
Okay.
Mer Cruises Solo. Yep.
Okay, brilliant. No, it's been brilliant to talk to you, and hopefully I might get you back on again, and hopefully you might take a trip into Cork sometime.
Yes, I'd love to. I'm so glad you had me on. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was fantastic.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Meredith.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.